Let me tell you something about space. It's not the romantic star-spangled adventure people imagine when they're stuck in dead-end jobs on backwater planets. Space is mostly boring. Incredibly, mind-numbingly boring. It's hours of absolute nothing punctuated by moments of pure unadulterated chaos. My name is Raven Lockhart, cargo hauler, occasional problem solver, and apparently the most wanted human in 3 spiral arms of the Milky Way. Not that I applied for the job. Hell, I didn't even know I had the job until recently. The day everything went sideways started like any other mind-numbing transport run. My ship, the persistent problem, yes, I name my ships with a sense of irony, was loaded down with 14,000 metric tons of industrial-grade lubricants, synthetic rubber compounds, and a small cargo of precision engineering components. Exciting stuff, I know. The kind of cargo that makes most people's eyes glaze over faster than a sleep-deprived accountant reviewing tax records. My ship's AI, which I'd programmed with what I thought was a sophisticated sense of humor, was currently displaying its usual mix of pragmatic commentary and passive-aggressive observations. The holographic interface flickered to life, showing a stylized representation of our current trajectory through the void. Navigation efficiency, 99.7%. The AI announced in a tone that suggested it was deeply disappointed by the 0.3% imperfection. Cargo stability, nominal. Pilot performance, marginally acceptable. Thanks for the vote of confidence, I muttered, adjusting the navigation controls. The persistent problem wasn't the newest or sleekest ship in the galaxy. She was more like a reliable workhorse, mace-dented, patched in places, but always getting the job done. The outer rim trading routes were never predictable. One moment you're cruising through seemingly empty space, the next you're dodging asteroid fields, random debris, or the occasional overly ambitious space pirate who didn't get the memo that attacking my ship was a bad life choice. My comm systems were running standard frequency sweeps, a routine check that most seasoned pilots perform to avoid surprises. Most days it picked up nothing more exciting than occasional trade chatter, navigation beacons, and the background noise of interstellar communication. Not today. The first anomaly appeared as a strange signal, not just strange, completely bizarre. The frequency didn't match any standard communication protocol I'd ever encountered. It was like someone had taken every known communication standard, thrown them into a blender, and then reconstructed the resulting mess using what I can only describe as quantum jazz. My AI's response was immediate, and frankly somewhat alarming. Unknown transmission detected. Encryption level, beyond classification. Potential threat assessment, elevated. The ship's defensive systems began a silent activation sequence. Shields didn't visibly change, but I could feel the subtle vibration of energy building around the hull. Something was very, very wrong. Then the holographic transmission flickered to life. It wasn't a clean projection like you'd see in official military or corporate channels. This was grainy, distorted emission, like an old transmission that had traveled through multiple quantum filters and survived a few explosions for good measure. The figure was humanoid, but wrapped in tactical gear that looked like it had been through several wars and lived to tell the tale. Lockhart, the figure said. No introduction, no pleasantries. Just my last name, spoken with a weight that suggested it carried more meaning than just a simple identifier. I leaned back in my pilot's chair, one hand casually drifting near the weapon system controls. Not out of fear, more like professional curiosity. Wrong number, I responded dryly. If you're looking for a telemarketer, I'm afraid I'm fresh out. Try the next solar system. The figure shifted, and for a brief moment, I caught a glimpse of something metallic. A weapon, advanced communication equipment. It was hard to tell through the transmission's interference. They're coming for you, the figure continued, voice low and urgent, all of them. Now in my line of work, vague threats are about as common as space dust. Cargo haulers hear more threats before breakfast than most people hear in a lifetime. But something in this transmission was different. The tone carried a weight of absolute certainty that cut through my usual sarcastic defenses. Who's coming? I asked, keeping my voice deliberately casual. My fingers were now close enough to the weapon controls that I could activate them in a microsecond if needed. The hologram flickered, eaten by static at the edges. The figure was becoming less distinct, more of a shadow than a clear image. The Confederation, the Stellar Concordat, the Shinral Combine. Every major galactic power knows what you did, what you're capable of. I'd been called many things in my career: efficient, reliable, pain in the ass. Occasionally a few less flattering terms by disgruntled shipping managers, but never mysterious, never galaxy-level threatening. Look, I said, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'm just a cargo hauler. My most exciting day involves not getting my shipment of industrial lubricants stolen by space pirates. Whatever grand conspiracy you think I'm part of, the transmission cut, completely, absolutely, like it had never existed. My ship's AI, never one to miss an opportunity for commentary, displayed a new message: probability of imminent complicated scenario, 87.3%. I sighed. Tell me something I don't know. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a very, very long day. The problem with having a complicated past is that it never stays in the past. Mine had a particular talent for catching up with me at the most inconvenient moments. Earth, 2247. Not the Earth of optimistic space exploration documentaries or gleaming sci-fi utopias. This was the Earth of corporate zones, environmental reconstruction zones, and vast mega-cities that stretched like concrete and carbon fiber tentacles across what used to be continents. I grew up in New Shanghai Rehabilitation Zone, 12 Mind, a charming slice of urban paradise, where hope came to die, and survival was an art form. My parents weren't heroes. They weren't martyrs. They were pragmatic survivors, who understood that in a world rebuilt from ecological collapse, adaptability was the only currency that truly mattered. My mother, Elena Lockhart, was a quantum systems engineer. Not the glamorous kind you see in recruitment videos, but the kind that spent 16-hour shifts maintaining the massive atmospheric reconstruction networks. Her work involved keeping massive carbon capture systems running, essentially helping humanity breathe a little easier with each passing year. My father, Marcus Lockhart, was something of an anomaly, a xenobiological diplomat who specialized in first contact protocols and interspecies communication. Most people thought it was a useless job, until it wasn't. I was 12 when everything changed. The Proxima incident, they called it later, a seemingly routine first contact scenario that went spectacularly wrong in ways no diplomatic training could have prepared anyone for. My father's team had established initial communication with the Vornax collective semi-organic, technologically advanced species from the Andromeda satellite galaxies. Initial interactions suggested a potential for peaceful exchange, trade, cultural understanding. The reality was something else entirely. I remember the day like it was yesterday. The family apartment's communication hub erupted with alerts, diplomatic encryption codes flashing in sequences that meant nothing to most people, but everything to those who understood their language. Containment protocols initiated, the system announced in its clinical, emotionless voice. Xenobiological threat level, Omega 9. My mother's face went stone cold, not with fear, with calculated precision. She began interfacing with multiple systems simultaneously, her neural implants creating a web of computational power that would make most supercomputers look like pocket calculators. Raven, she said, not looking away from the holographic displays, go to the safety protocol room. Now, I didn't argue. In our family, that tone meant business. The safety protocol room was less a room, and more a technological marvel, reinforced quantum-locked walls, multiple communication scramblers, backup power systems that could run for decades, and at its center, a single interface terminal that looked deceptively simple. What happened next became classified faster than most people could blink. The Vornax weren't just another alien species looking to make first contact. They were a collective intelligence with a singular purpose: technological assimilation. Not through traditional invasion, but through a complex form of informational parasitism that could compromise entire planetary communication networks. My father's team discovered something the Vornax wanted, something so significant that it triggered protocols none of the diplomatic training manuals had ever considered. The genetic registry, my mother would tell me years later, her voice a mixture of pride and profound sadness. They wanted access to humanity's complete genetic archive. Not for study, for reconstruction, such a clinical word for what was essentially a form of species-wide eugenic redesign. My father's final transmission was a series of encrypted codes and a message that would haunt me: Lockhart Protocol is now active. Protect the registry at all costs. In the span of 72 hours, the entire diplomatic team vanished, officially listed as missing in action, unofficially, completely erased from every known database. Except for one thing remained: me. The next decade of my life became a masterclass in survival and strategic misdirection. My mother, using her engineering background and a network of contacts that seemed to span the entire solar system, ensured I was never in one place for too long. Cargo hauling became my cover. My ships became my home. Each transport run was a carefully calculated dance of misdirection and survival. The Vornax never stopped looking, and somewhere out there, other entities had started to take notice. My AI's voice interrupted my memories. Incoming quantum encrypted transmission. Origin, unknown. Some days I really hated space. The thing about being perpetually on the run is that you develop a sixth sense. Not some mystical mumbo-jumbo, but a genuine finely tuned awareness that comes from years of knowing someone might be hunting you. My ship's quantum detection grid lit up like a Christmas tree. Multiple tracking signatures detected, my AI announced. Its voice had shifted from its usual sardonic tone to something closer to genuine concern. Confederation pursuit vessels. Estimated time to intercept 47 minutes. I'd dealt with Confederation ships before. They weren't your typical space police. The Galactic Confederation was more like a cross between an interstellar bureaucracy and a military-industrial complex with seriously good funding and even better technology. I pulled up the tactical display. 3 ships, no, make that 4. They were trying to be subtle, spreading out in a tactical formation that suggested they wanted to box me in rather than simply shoot me down. Cute, I muttered. Real cute. The persistent problem wasn't just a cargo ship. She had a few modifications that weren't exactly standard issue. My father's final lessons weren't just about survival, they were about always having an exit strategy. I accessed a hidden systems panel. Most ships had standard navigation and defense protocols. Mine had something entirely different. A quantum displacement drive that wasn't in any official registry. Not because it was illegal, because it technically shouldn't exist. The first wave of pursuit vessels began their approach. Sleek Confederation interceptors. The kind that could punch through most standard cargo ship defenses like they were tissue paper. But I wasn't most cargo ships. Initiating evasive sequence Lockhart 7, I told the AI. Prepare quantum displacement modules. The ship hummed. Not the typical engine vibration, but something deeper. Something that suggested massive energy was being channeled in ways most engineers would consider improbable. The pursuit vessels were close now. Close enough that on a standard ship, panic would be the only reasonable response. I wasn't standard. A transmission crackled through. Confederation standard encryption. I let it play. Unidentified cargo vessel. This is Confederation Interceptor Squad Omega 9. You are ordered to power down and prepare for boarding and inspection. I laughed. Not a nervous laugh. A genuine this is absolutely ridiculous laugh. Negative, I responded. Busy right now. The first targeting lock activated. Confederation ships were charging weapons, plasma-based, capable of turning most ships into rapidly expanding clouds of superheated debris. Quantum displacement in 3, 2, 1. The universe did something weird. Not the Hollywood-style jump to hyperspace, not a dramatic streaking of stars. More like reality itself seemed to fold, twist, and then reassemble differently. When the sensors stabilized, we were 3.2 light-years away from our previous position. The pursuing ships were gone, not destroyed, just elsewhere. Displacement successful, the AI reported. Structural integrity, 99.4%. Quantum drive temperature, nominal. I allowed myself a moment of satisfaction. Then I noticed the additional alert. Incoming transmission, the AI said. Origin, multiple simultaneous sources. Encryption beyond current classification standards. The holographic display flickered. Multiple images began to resolve, not just one transmission, several, simultaneously. A Sinral diplomatic representative, a stellar Concordat military strategist, what looked like a non-corporeal energy being from the Andromeda Collective, and something else, something that didn't quite register as a traditional life form. They all looked concerned. Miss Lockhart, the Shinral representative began, we need to discuss the Proxima Protocol. I had a feeling this was going to be a very long conversation. I'm listening, I said. But first, anyone want to explain why you've been chasing me across 3-star systems? The universe, it seemed, was about to get complicated. Diplomatic conversations are never simple, especially when those conversations involve multiple alien species, quantum communication protocols, and a cargo hauler who would rather be anywhere else. The holographic display stabilized, revealing representatives that would make most xenobiological textbooks look like amateur sketches. The Shinral diplomat was a crystalline humanoid form that seemed to shift and refract light with every micro-movement. The stellar Concordat strategist appeared as a semi-transparent holographic projection that flickered between multiple potential visual configurations. And then there was the non-corporeal entity from the Andromeda Collective. It didn't so much appear as manifest. Waves of computational energy that suggested consciousness without any traditional physical form. Miss Lockhart, the Shinral representative, began, its voice a series of precise musical tones that translated through the ship's communication systems. We require clarification regarding the status of the Proxima Protocol. I leaned back in my pilot's chair. I require more context, and possibly a very strong drink. The non-corporeal entity shifted. If energy could look impatient, this was doing an excellent job of it. The protocol, it stated, stated was the only verb that could describe the way information seemed to crystallize around the communication, represents a potential existential safeguard for multiple galactic civilizations. My AI chose that moment to display a helpful annotation. Translation complexity, 87% probability of multiple underlying meanings. Fantastic. Let me get this straight, I said. My father's diplomatic work involves something so significant that multiple galactic powers are now treating me like some kind of walking potential apocalypse. The stellar Concordat strategist materialized more fully. Unlike the others, this projection looked almost human, almost. There was something in the eyes, a depth that suggested multiple simultaneous thought processes. The Proxima Protocol, it began, was not just a diplomatic initiative, it was a comprehensive genetic preservation strategy. Memories flooded back, fragments of conversations, late-night discussions between my parents, encrypted data transfers, moments that seemed random but were clearly part of a much larger design. My mother, Elena, had been more than just a quantum systems engineer. She had been developing something, a method of genetic archiving that went beyond traditional DNA preservation. Your parents, the Shinral representative continued, discovered a method of genetic encoding that could potentially preserve not just biological information, but quantum computational matrices of entire species' evolutionary potential. I laughed. Not a ha-ha laugh, more of a what the hell are you talking about laugh. You're telling me my parents created some kind of galactic species backup system? The non-corporeal entity pulsed. If energy could look smug, this was doing an excellent job. Not a backup, it corrected. A potential reset mechanism, a way to preserve the fundamental informational integrity of sentient species across multiple dimensional matrices. My head was starting to hurt. And the Vornax? I asked. Where do they fit into this? Silence. A very specific kind of silence that suggested volumes of information were being carefully not said. The stellar Concordat strategist's projection flickered. The Vornax seek to control evolutionary potential, not just for themselves. For all known sentient species. Control, such a simple word for what was essentially a form of species-wide genetic manipulation. Your father's final transmission, the Shinral representative said, contained more than just encryption codes. It contained the fundamental key to the entire Proxima Protocol, a key stored in my genetic matrix, and everyone wants this key, I said flatly. Multiple affirmative responses emerged simultaneously, not spoken, not projected, just understood. My AI's voice cut through the tension. Incoming proximity alert. Multiple unidentified vessels approaching. Estimated time to intercept 22 minutes. Some days I really hated space diplomacy. Well, I said to the assembled galactic representatives, this conversation is about to get very interesting. The universe, it seemed, was preparing for a performance, and I was going to be the unwilling star. The thing about multiple advanced alien civilizations converging on your ship is that it's rarely a social call. My ship's defensive systems were doing something I'd never seen before. Not just preparing for combat, but actively reconfiguring themselves in ways that defied standard engineering logic. Quantum shielding modules were shifting. Adaptive camouflage systems were calculating potential threat matrices faster than most supercomputers could process a single calculation. Incoming vessel configuration, my AI announced. Vornax assault formation detected. Multiple dimensional breach signatures. I'd studied the Vornax enough to know they weren't your typical invaders. They didn't just attack, they infiltrated, adapted, transformed. The holographic representatives from earlier were still present, but their projections had shifted. No longer calm diplomatic interfaces. Now they looked concerned. The Shinral crystal form diplomat's projection fractured momentarily. The genetic key cannot fall into Vornax control, it stated. Not a request. A fundamental imperative. Wonderful, I muttered. No pressure or anything. My mother's training kicked in. Years of preparation weren't just about survival, they were about understanding systems. breaking them, rebuilding them. The first Vornax ships emerged from what could only be described as a dimensional fold, not like traditional spacecraft, more like living mathematical equations that had somehow decided to manifest as physical entities. They didn't just approach, they calculated their approach. Each ship was a complex organic technological hybrid, surfaces that seemed to breathe, weapon systems that reconfigured themselves based on predictive combat algorithms, the kind of technology that made human military tech look like children's toy blocks. Quantum displacement not recommended, my AI reported. Vornax tracking systems have adapted to previous evasion protocols. I accessed a hidden control panel, something my father had installed years ago, not just a system, a completely off-the-books technological marvel that existed in a legal and technological gray area. The Proxima Protocol wasn't just a genetic preservation method, it was a comprehensive survival strategy. Initiating quantum genetic firewall, I said, not to anyone specific, just stating a fact. My body started to do something weird, not painful, not dramatic, just different. Quantum markers in my genetic code began to activate, not like a weapon, more like a complex computational system that was part biological, part technological. The Vornax ship stopped, not slowed down, not hesitated, completely stopped. Genetic authentication protocol engaged, my AI reported. Its voice had changed, become something more than just a ship's computer. Proxima Protocol, active. The non-corporeal Andromeda collective entity materialized fully, no longer an energy projection, something more substantial, more present. The genetic key, it said, is not just information, it is a fundamental reset mechanism for evolutionary potential. My parents' final gift wasn't just survival, it was a way to protect not just humanity, but potentially every sentient species in multiple dimensional matrices. The Vornax ships began to deconstruct, not destroyed, transformed, reverted to base computational matrices that lost all aggressive potential. Threat neutralized, my AI announced. Proxima Protocol, successful. I laughed, because sometimes the universe has a truly bizarre sense of humor. Well, I said to the assembled alien representatives, I'm guessing this wasn't in your diplomatic briefings. The universe, it seemed, had just changed fundamental rules of engagement, and I was right in the middle of it. Aftermath is never clean, especially when you've just accidentally rewritten the rules of galactic interaction. The communication hub of the persistent problem looked like a war room after a particularly intense strategy session. Holographic displays flickered with data streams that would make most quantum physicists weep with joy or madness, probably both. The Shinril diplomatic representative Nasiv, still looking like a living crystal that had decided to take diplomacy as a serious hobby, was reviewing the computational matrices of what had just occurred. The Proxima Protocol, it stated, its crystalline form refracting light in complex patterns, is not just a preservation mechanism, it's a fundamental evolutionary reset technology. I held up a hand. Can we translate that from high-level alien speak to something that resembles human language? The non-corporeal Andromeda collective entity Midas, which had taken on a more defined form that looked like a shimmering computational cloud, seemed to chuckle. If energy could chuckle, this was doing an excellent job. Your parents, it explained, created a genetic key that could potentially restart evolutionary trajectories for entire species, not just preserve, reset, recalibrate. My mother, Elena Lockhart, had been more than just a quantum systems engineer. She'd been a visionary who understood that evolution wasn't just a biological process, it was an informational system that could be optimized. The Stellar Concordat military strategist, still flickering between multiple potential visual configurations, added its perspective. The Vornax were attempting to control evolutionary potential. Your parents created a mechanism to prevent that control. I thought about my father's final transmission, the encrypted codes, the desperate urgency in his voice. He hadn't just been protecting information, he'd been protecting potential. So basically, I summarized, my parents created a cosmic reset button that prevents any single species from hijacking the evolutionary process of others. Multiple affirmative responses emerged simultaneously, not spoken, just understood. My ship's AI chose that moment to display a helpful annotation. Probability of accidentally becoming galactic evolutionary guardian, 92.7%. I laughed, because sometimes the universe has an absolutely twisted sense of humor. The diplomatic discussions continued, not just about what had happened, but about what would happen next. The Proxima Protocol wasn't just a technological marvel, It was a fundamental shift in how galactic civilizations might interact. You understand, the Shinrol representative said, its musical tones suggesting both warning and respect, that you are now more than just a cargo hauler. I thought about my life. The constant movement, the carefully constructed identity of just another space trucker moving goods between distant star systems. I'm going to need a really good lawyer, I muttered. The non-corporeal entity pulsed. If energy could look amused, this was doing an excellent job. Somewhere in the vast computational matrices of the universe, my parents were probably laughing. The persistent problems navigation system began calculating a new course, not just a shipping route, something more complex, something that suggested multiple potential trajectories. Incoming transmission, my AI announced. Multiple diplomatic credentials requesting consultation. I leaned back in the pilot's chair, looked at the vast starfield outside the ship's quantum-reinforced windows. Well, I said to no one and everyone, this is going to be interesting. The universe, it seemed, was just getting started, and I was going to be right in the middle of it.